What's up? I'm Troubleshoot. Welcome back to another video. I'll be taking you through optimizing Overwatch 2 now that it's come to Steam. This has a very mixed review as it's coming to Steam. Well, okay, maybe not mixed. Anyways, there'll be a few more people in this game, so this is what this guide is for, an up-to-date optimization guide for Overwatch 2. It's not just for Overwatch 2 Invasion on Steam, but it's also for the Battle.net version as well. It'll help you get better FPS and performance on any platform. Now, obviously, before we get into this video too far, if you want even more performance out of your PC, I'd highly recommend optimizing your Windows as well, and for that you'll find a link in the description down below, not only for Windows 10, 11, but also an NVIDIA optimization guide as well to get even more out of your PC besides optimizing just the game itself, which is what this guide will focus on. First of all, before we even begin, if you're using Battle.net, there's two options I highly recommend you change. In Battle.net, all you need to do is head to Overwatch 2. I don't have it installed here, so I'll select Hearthstone, then click the settings wheel next to play at the very bottom here, and inside of the game settings section, we'll be copying the install location for Overwatch 2 here. So you can select it and copy it. Then on the app section at the very top, simply scroll down on this page and make sure that use browser acceleration is turned off unless you receive some weird issues in this Battle.net launcher. And on top of this, you should see on game launch at the very top, change this so it's not keeping Battle.net open, but instead it exits Battle.net completely. Now just keep in mind, we do have where the game is installed selected as such, and to do this on Steam, all you need to do is locate it in your library, then right-click, Manage, and click Browse Local Files. Then it'll open up where the game is installed. Simply copy this location up here, and now whether you're on Battle.net or Steam, we have the install path for the game copied. What we need to do now is make sure that we have the best game settings for this in Windows. Hit Start and type in Game Mode, where we'll open up Game Mode Settings. Inside of our Settings control panel, you should see a switch for Game Mode. Make sure that this is turned on. We'll close it, then we'll hit Start and type in Graphics, where we'll open Graphics Settings. We'll then, on Windows 11, select Graphics down here, and we should be taken down to a page like this. Otherwise, at the very top of the previous screen, you'll see Change Default Graphics Settings. Anyways, now we're in System Display Graphics. What we need to do here is make sure optimization for windowed games is enabled if you're on Windows 11, and in the Advanced Graphics settings on Windows 11, you'll see Hardware Accelerated GPU Scheduling if you have this available on your PC. If you do, make sure that this is enabled. Then, simply scrolling down, you'll either see a Browse button, or you'll be able to add a desktop app. Select this, then we'll paste in the address at the very top by clicking here and pasting in the Overwatch install path, hit enter, then make sure to double click on overwatch.exe. Now you should see Overwatch is added to the list of games on our PC, at least somewhere. I'll search for it. There we go. Overwatch. We'll expand it and make sure that GPU preference is set to high performance, whatever your high performance graphics card is. You can also enable optimizations for windowed games if you're on Windows 11 and have this option available. Now that we've done this, if you'd like more performance, remember to check the description down below for multiple videos on improving Windows even further. For now, we'll launch into Overwatch 2 and get to the in-game options. If it's your first time launching Overwatch 2 on Steam, you'll be dropped directly into the options menu. Otherwise, you'll see the main menu. We can press escape to bring up the menu, then options, and now we're all in the same place on the video tab. So starting at the very top, display mode, I'd highly recommend using full screen here for the best possible FPS. Target display is whatever display it's on. Resolution should match your monitor for what it says on the box. If it's a 2K screen, select 2560 by 1440 and choose a compatible refresh rate with your monitor. If you've got a 165Hz monitor, you can select it here, otherwise 144, etc. Don't worry if you can't really run it at this resolution, as we'll be lowering the resolution or the render resolution later on in this optimization. Just make sure it matches your display perfectly, or at least is a compatible resolution, otherwise things will be blurry for no reason. Then field of view is entirely your preference. Don't worry about FPS if you can't game properly. Aspect ratio should match whatever display you're currently using, and dynamic render scale, I'd highly recommend turning this off. Render scale change it from automatic to custom, and then leave it at 100%. And frame rate, you can change from automatic to custom as well to set a maximum frame rate limit. You can adjust this as high as you want. This is your maximum. VSync, I'd highly recommend turning this off unless you get screen tearing where the top and the bottom half of your screen doesn't match up in gameplay. Triple buffering and reduced buffering should both be set to off, and NVIDIA Reflex can be enabled if you have an NVIDIA graphics card. If your system is GPU limited, you can set this to enabled, and if your system is CPU limited, you can set this to enabled plus boost. But this ultimately doesn't really matter except for really small input latency differences. It really depends on your setup. Gamma, contrast, and brightness are all your preference once more. Scrolling down, that's really it besides HDR. Apply your changes, and now we can head across to the graphics quality tab. Now, as this game isn't something crazy, the textures are relatively simple for what they are. We can adjust the graphics quality down quite a bit without worrying about impact too much. The game looks great even on lowest settings and will get infinitely more FPS than on higher settings with barely any visual difference. So you can leave the graphics quality preset at whatever you'd like, and I'd recommend choosing AMD FSR 1.0, but you can try 2.2 here as well. Image sharpening should be set between 0.25 and 0.3 depending on your results. I'd recommend playing around with this option as you may get better performance with one over the other, etc. Texture quality, set this to low. Texture filtering quality to, at the highest option, high 4x, otherwise medium 2x. I'll set it to high for example. Local fog detail to low. Then dynamic reflections and shadow detail both to off. You can enable shadows if you think they give you a competitive advantage, but usually they don't really. Model detail you should set to low, as well as effects detail, and finally lighting as well. Then anti-aliasing quality, you can leave this on medium. FXAA is needlessly blurry, but I'd highly recommend setting this to off for the maximum possible FPS. And on top of this, by disabling anti-aliasing, your screen will look drastically sharper, allowing you to see things in the distance a bit more clearly. This is preference. If you really hate jagged edges, you can have this enabled at whatever FPS cost it comes with. Refraction quality you should set to low. Screenshot quality is your preference, though do note the higher you push this, the more your game will lag when you take a screenshot. Ambient occlusion should be set to off. Local reflections should be set to on, that way you can see other players in reflections. It's a competitive advantage to leave this enabled. And finally, damage FX, set this down to low. Awesome. Now we can apply and move across to details. On this section here, there's not too much you need to worry about, but you can show your frame rate, GPU temperature, VRAM usage, network latency, and network interpolation delay in-game if you'd like to know what you're getting. Obviously, if you have something like the Steam overlay, you'll already see your FPS in the top left or wherever you have that set, etc. You can also display the system clock if you'd like to know what time it is currently as well. Perfect. At this point, what we need to do is restart the game for our changes to apply, as we'll need to change a few more things when we get back. So we'll exit, yes, and restart it. When your game restarts, if you don't already have the FPS counter enabled, you'll need one enabled for this next step in order to see how much you gain from messing around with the render resolution and AMD FSR. So with that enabled, we'll head to play, followed by training, then practice range. We can hit H to change our hero, and after selecting someone, we should be able to head to roughly this area here to monitor our FPS. Usually I'll have frame rate, GPU temperature, as well as network latency and possibly interpolation enabled as well. Now we can see what kind of FPS we're getting. I'm sitting at around 450. We can get even more if we were to mess around with our AMD FSR setting. As we have FSR enabled, we can hit escape, options, then graphics quality. Make sure FSR is selected here. On the video tab at the very top, you should see render scale. This is what we'll be playing around with. By default, FSR 2.2 requires 67% in-game resolution as the highest option, but if you're messing around with FSR 1, you can render the game at a much higher resolution, for example 90, etc., and move your way down, seeing what kind of graphical difference it makes, as well as the impact on your FPS. You'd want to push it down as low as you're comfortable to get to an FPS that you're aiming for. FSR 2.2 is great at 67% at the highest option, and it actually really looks super good. You wouldn't even know that you're rendering at half the resolution, especially on higher detailed displays like 2K and 4K. However, options, video, graphics quality, changing this to 1.0 and applying on the video section will raise the resolution to 100%, which is where you'll start usually, apply, and we'll see what kind of FPS we're getting. The game looks noticeably worse, which is surprising actually, as we're rendering at native resolution now with no FSR affecting us at all. We're setting it around apparently 520 FPS, but it was a little bit lower than that a second ago. If we go ahead and open up our options, video, then on the video tab, we'll lower the in-game resolution to say 90 first, apply, and see what FPS difference we have, as well as the impact on our graphics. I think we gained around 20 or 30 FPS. You can continue this cycle for as long as you'd like, lowering it to 80 for example, seeing what kind of FPS you're getting. There's another practically 100 FPS, etc. Play around with this until you're super happy. That being said, if you lower it too low, you'll notice that your display seems rather blurry. At this point, you've gone too far, and you probably are seeing not too many extra FPS. For example, I lowered it from 70 or 80, I think it was, down to 50, and we haven't gained any FPS. We've only lost graphic quality. Everything looks super bad. Obviously, you can lower this as low as you need to on a low-end system, but on higher ends, 80 or 90% is probably the best you'll get with FSR 1. However, the native render resolution actually looks worse than FSR 2 at 67%. It's crazy how good the quality of this is, not to mention FPS-wise. This looks actually amazing. Now, if you find that you're stuttering in-game whenever you're running around at your new high FPS, or for example, your recording software such as OBS is overloading, what you want to do is cap your FPS to slightly lower than the FPS you're getting right now. For example, I'm getting 440. I'll open up the options, video, and we'll change the maximum frame rate from custom to, let's say, 420 or just 400 if we're getting 440. We're technically sacrificing a few FPS, but the game should be noticeably more stable, and there'll be a little bit of extra graphics card for the rest of our system to use for whatever's open. Obviously, if you're not someone who's crazy about maximum frame rates, what are you doing here? But obviously, you'll need to make some kind of changes if you're trying to record and OBS, for example, isn't as stable as you'd hope. Then for our final view options, hit escape, options, and on the gameplay tab at the very top, make sure that high precision mouse input is enabled. That way we have raw mouse input sent directly to the game, which should give you a better aiming experience and a more accurate one at that. Then on the accessibility tab under general, we can disable HUD shake as well as menu movement if that's something you'd like. You can also reduce camera shake here as well if you find that it's too much while you're playing the game. You can also change your colorblind options here, but that's your preference. And finally, something some people like to do is on the controls tab at the very top, even if you're a mouse and keyboard player, under the controller section, advanced, you can disable aim smoothing here if you find that you're having any issues. And now that we've customized our in-game options for as best as we want them to be, we can get even more out of our game if you're comfortable messing around with some option files on your PC. All we need to do is close the game completely, yes, and now our settings should have been saved. We'll open up a new file explorer with Start and E, then we'll head across to Documents, followed by Overwatch, then Settings, and we'll find Settings v0.ini. Open this with any text editor such as Notepad. Inside of here, we can disable the intro, as well as high-tech input. You should make sure that this is set to 1. Then scrolling down further, you can change the frame rate cap here as well, but I'll leave it at 600. Local fog detail should be set to 0. Then both of these anisotropy settings here should be set to 0. Max effects anisotropy and max extra quality anisotropy should both be 0. Besides this, everything else we've changed in-game, but you can edit these however you'd like, such as, for example, the windowed refresh rate, etc. You can disable subtitles and other options from here. It's just a different way to manually edit things compared to doing them in-game. If you have multiple graphics cards and you're having issues choosing the correct graphics card to run on, this is where you'll change it up here in this GPU section. Obviously, it's an issue that very few people will have, but this is where you can fix it. Obviously, just make sure you have the right ID, vendor ID, and name here. Anyways, we'll save this, close it, and at this this point, we've now fully optimized Overwatch 2 for the best possible performance on our PC for both Battle.net and of course now Steam. That's really about it for this relatively quick guide. Once again, if you'd like more performance out of your PC, check the description down below for Windows 10, 11 and NVIDIA optimization guides. Thank you all for watching. Mine has been Troubleshoot, and I'll see you all next time. Ciao.